You know, Florida State is absolutely terrible. I mean, I've never, ever seen a team that's supposed to be that good bomb that bad. I mean, they go out and they get a bunch of players. They give their coach a fat contract, and now they can't get rid of him. They're terrible. But on the other side of the ball of this weekend, Florida State at Miami, you have a team that, I mean, the media is wetting their britches. I mean, they can't get enough of this team who historically beat Florida A&M. Oh, I think about the annals of college football recording that big win of 62-0 over Ball State, or maybe 50-15 over South Florida. Oh, that was tough, wasn't it? Miami, they got a good quarterback. That Restrepo guy, I like him. That Martinez fella they got out of Oregon State, incredible. But as a team, they are terribly overrated. And when they've had to play someone who was just kind of okay, they got out by the skin of their teeth. And that's why I have TJ from College Football Addiction and Double Fries No Slaw on the channel. TJ, you're a battered Florida State fan,
No.
but I see you guys giving them a game. I see you giving them the game. Am I overly medicated over here? Come on.
Yeah, I was going to say, what have you had to drink this morning? Was there a Friday morning mimosa bar open somewhere? Unlimited mimosas. Did you go out with the girls?
I did. It was brunch. Little finger foods.
Big brunch vibes on that one. Yeah, I mean, in absolutely, there are ways I think Florida State could make this competitive. And Miami at times has looked really bad, like they did against the first half of the Cal game. At times in the third quarter against Louisville, first few quarters of the Virginia Tech game, I don't think they played very well. I think Cam Ward had 3 turnovers, and I think they had 4 turnovers as a team that game. And so, yeah, like if Miami was to do that, which they've struggled at times against better competition, if we're being fair, if Miami was to do that, then yeah, I think you as Florida State, you'd have a chance to stay in it. What I fear for Florida State is that, first of all, they're not very good themselves, right? And, they peed all down their leg against Duke. And so it's hard for me to think that, if you can't handle your business against Duke, you're all of a sudden going to handle your business better against a team, that maybe is overrated some in the national scheme, but like it's still way better than you are and probably way better than Duke is. So that's my first concern is Florida State, isn't even remotely competent to even try and take advantage of some Miami mistakes if they were to happen. And then second, I think that, when Miami has played down against competition, going on the West Coast to Cal, playing a Virginia Tech team that lost to Vandy and had some bad losses in the beginning of the year, I think that Miami has kind of overlooked them or played down to competition. And I think in a rivalry game, that is less likely to happen. I think, Miami, you're not going to get the benefit of like sneaking up on them because Miami is going to get up for this game. Now, by the same token, I think Florida State will get up for this game, just like they did when Clemson came to town. I think they got up for that game. And so, yeah, with all that considered, I think Miami is a, at least 3 touchdown better than, as Vegas tells you, team. And that I don't know. The idea of a path to a Florida State victory involves a lot of weird stuff going on.
I watched the Duke game, and you're a true freshman quarterback out of Savannah threw a beautiful pass over the top. Your receiver had beat the safety, or I think it was a safety, over the top, and he dropped it in the end zone, which has been the tale of Florida State. I mean, Florida State did that against Clemson, and I've told Clemson fans, hey, we've got a problem there because we had guys getting open, and it was Florida State. The roster is talented, though. You guys do have the talent there. You do have the rivalry, and the last time you lost to Miami was 2020, and that was a season that you guys would probably like to forget. You're on a 3-game winning streak against the Canes. Do you think that your wide receivers receive some type of divine healing and they start catching the football? Because the quarterback has been, whoever he may be, has been putting the football there. I
Yeah,
mean, I've seen it.
Florida State leads the country in drop rate. And so they lead the country in some other things too that aren't very good. And we can talk about those in a minute. But like, yeah, they're worst in FBS, like 134 out of 134 in dropping the ball. Or if you look at it from, if you go glass half full, they're actually the best at it. They're number one in the country at how high their drop percentage is. So don't say that we're not leading the league in anything. Yeah, I mean, that's not the ACC. That's not like 17 out of 17 or whatever stupid number we're up to now. It's 134th. Like they are literally the worst in the country at dropping the ball, or again, the best, however you look at it. But that's Miami's secondary is not even really that good. Like that's the one part of Miami's team that even the biggest Miami fan or internet troll will tell you, like, yeah, the secondary worries me. Like if we were going up against Oregon or Texas or Georgia or one of these teams, like, yeah, I'd be worried about what the secondary could do. I'd hope that the defensive line could get home. And so, yeah, like that's a major concern for them. So we probably will have some guys streaking wide open behind their secondary. And it's just kind of, can you catch the ball? Because you haven't proven through this year that you could. Florida State's wide receivers were bad under DJ Uyunglele. They've been worse since Brock Glenn and Luke Kromenhoek have come in. Like, I mean, I told you this, I think we talked after the Clemson game. Florida State had their best QB performance of the year, according to PFF. And in Brock Glenn, a freshman coming in after DJ Uyunglele against a good Clemson team. And what did they get in addition to their best quarterback performance? The worst performance they'd had from the wide receivers per PFF since the season started. And so, yeah, the team just doesn't pick each other up. Like one part will play good and the rest will play like crap. And so, yeah, I mean, Miami secondary is certainly going to give you some chances. I'm not super confident in Florida State to be able to catch the ball. Maybe they'll make me wrong and make me a liar in this one, but they're not coached very well. The coach is the wide receiver coach is somebody that Mike Norvell tried to replace 2 years ago. He couldn't. And, for whatever reason has settled with keeping him at Florida State for the last 2 years. And the wide receiver play has gotten worse and worse. I mean, they got some help out of the portal the last couple of years and that helped kind of mask it. But yeah, they don't develop anybody. They don't teach anything well. They don't block super well on the outside this year. And so I don't have a lot of confidence that even if Miami's defense gives up some big opportunities that we can capitalize on them.
As of this week, according to the NCAA website, Miami is ranked number 21 total defense. But when you go and you look at the points they've given up to teams like Virginia Tech, they gave up 34 points there. They gave up 38 points to California. They gave up 45 points to Louisville. This is 3 games in a row. And all joking aside, we know their offense is ridiculous. Cam Ward is the man. And I talked about Restrepo. I'm extremely impressed by him. But when you get into a game where people can catch the football, I mean, they're going to drop a game if they keep playing like this. I tell the truth to my Clemson fans and my fellow Clemson brethren that if Clemson's secondary doesn't tighten up, we're going to get exposed by someone out there. God forbid it's in a playoff game or maybe against Miami. Let's talk about trying to control Cam Ward. I mean, do you think you guys can control him at all, or is that just like some type of crazy mimosa infused dream?
So, I mean, I don't think you can just absolutely like eliminate what he does. Like there's a reason he's probably the best quarterback in the country and he's probably going to New York City for the Heisman ceremony. And, based on what, Genty or Hunter do, he may even win the thing. So yeah, I don't think Florida State could just stop him. I will say, I think Florida State has the best defense that he's seen yet. And I don't think Florida State's defense is especially good. But they're not bad, right? They're better than Louisville's. They're better than Virginia Tech's. They're better than Cal's, and they're better than anybody else. Florida's was terrible to start the year. And then FAMU, Ball State, USF. Like I like Florida State's better than them. So I will say that. Like I do think that Florida State's defense probably matches up with Miami's offense better than anyone else's. My big concern, and I said this on Double Fries No Slaw on Wednesday night, is that Florida State's offense and defense just do not play very complementary football. Florida State's offense can't get anything going. And Florida State's offense didn't score an offensive touchdown against Duke, right? You had 3 field goals and a kick return touchdown. They had one offensive touchdown against Memphis. They had two offensive touchdowns against SMU. They've just not been very good. They had two offensive touchdowns against Cal. Like they haven't had. I mean, Pitt last night had three defensive touchdowns. Florida State has not had a game with three touchdowns in it yet this year. Three total touchdowns. Like Florida State hasn't done that yet. Their highest that they've scored on U.S. soil is 16 points. And so when I think about that, and I think about just how inept their offense is, I really have a tough time seeing Florida State have the ball enough to give their defense a break. I could very much see Florida State's defense like not stopping by any means. I don't want to be disrespectful to Cam and that really good offense, but slowing down Miami's offense and holding them to 17 points in the first half, like this being kind of a game at 17-7 or 17-6 at halftime to where you're kind of in it, right? And it's not embarrassing yet. But then in the second half, kind of like it happened against SMU, the score was 14-9 at halftime against SMU. And then SMU scored about 1 billion points in the second half because the defense was just never off of the field. I could very much see that same situation this weekend where Florida State's defense comes out, plays fairly well, plays with their hair on fire, maybe gets a turnover, gets a big sack on Ward that maybe forces a fumble. I don't know, whatever, right? Plays well enough in the first half to keep you in it. But then the offense just, I don't see them getting anything going. I'd be surprised if Florida State scored a touchdown in this game. That's not a joke. Like if you can't score one against Duke, I have a hard time thinking you score one down in South Florida against a team that's going to get up for you in a massive way. And so if Florida State's not able to move the ball, if they're not able to control the clock at all, I think that's where Florida State's defense ends up getting exposed because they're just on the field for the entire game. Again, similar, I mentioned the SMU game, similar to Clemson, Georgia, right? Defense did enough in the first half, and then eventually just the floodgates open, and that's kind of the way I see the game going down, and Miami kind of winning it going away.
So I am very much a believer in desperate teams that they can either fold like a lawn chair or they turn around and they mess up things because they're desperate. They're like, we haven't done anything. There's nothing that we're trying to defend here, right? So we're just going to come at you. So I believe Florida State's going to play up for them. I know Miami's going to play up for them as well. Miami really doesn't have to play anyone the rest of the season. I mean, right after you guys, they have Duke, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, and Syracuse. I'm still not sold on Pittsburgh. I know that's a side note because, last night their defense scored 3 touchdowns. Their offense had a lot to prove. Anyway, do you think that if the game comes down to, let's just say it's tied for some reason towards the end of the game, do you trust Mario Cristobal to make the proper calls? Because he really hasn't had to do anything special this year, but we've seen in the past, and this is Miami fans being upset about it. Like, man, what, is he really the man? Do you think that it would play in y'all's favor if the game had to come down or be placed on his shoulders to make a game time decision to beat you guys?
Yeah, so I think that specific scenario is, and I'll say I'll be a politician here since we're less than 2 weeks away from the election, and I'll say yes and no. Yes, because if it was truly on Mario's shoulders, then you kind of like your chances of him doing something dumb and making a mistake, right? The problem is with Cam Ward being a guy that's been in college forever, had a ton of snaps, and really is the one kind of running that show. The worry for me as a Florida State fan, as much as I want to believe that, like, oh, maybe if it's close late, Mario will screw it up. I think that Mario, to his credit, has done a really good job of getting out of the way here and letting Shannon Dawson, their offensive coordinator, and Cam Ward kind of run the show, and Mario stepping back and CEOing the thing a little bit better. And so, yes, I would love if it came down to that and it was close and it was a Mario decision that screwed it up. I just think that Mario's kind of said, let me get out of the way a little bit and let this Heisman type candidate run the show. Let me not overcomplicate things. Let me not try and because like last year, and to Mario's credit, like last year, he had some boneheaded stuff that cost them some games. I also think that he knew his team wasn't good enough. And so he tried to like pull all the right strings. And sometimes you're going to pull right strings. Sometimes you're going to pull wrong strings. This year, I don't think he's had to do that. Like he's able to just, even in close games, the Virginia Tech game, the Cal game, the Louisville game, I don't really think that it's been him pulling the right strings. I think he's kind of like stepped back from it and said, no, I'm going to let my Heisman quarterback go out there and win it. So, yeah, it's a close game late. Miami's got the ball with 5 minutes to go or something like that. And I'm not really my concern is not really like, oh man, could Mario screw this up? It's like, what amazing thing is Cam Ward going to do here late? Because Mario's done a good job, I think, of getting out of his way and just letting that kid be great. So I don't know, maybe a little positive, a little negative on it.
Yeah. I'm voting for you, my friend, because you just pivoted. So let's talk about that for just a second, and then we're going to wrap things up here. Yeah, when you have a guy like Cam Ward, you just get out of the way, and you say, "Hey, man, you've been playing for a while. You know the game. You know your abilities. We're just going to give you some generic play to where you can just make the decision on the fly," and I could see that definitely happening here. If Florida State were to beat Miami, how bad do you think that would tank Miami as far as like in the sight of the media? Because the media has been drunk on these guys. I mean, the only other team that they've been more drunk on is Texas. We kind of get why. Penn State hasn't done a thing in a very long time. I've commonly called James Franklin the Mark Richt of Penn State. You know, what do you think would happen to their perception if you guys did do the unthinkable?
Well, I mean, at that point, Miami's probably not making the ACC championship. And I've been breaking down kind of the scenarios, but just really high level overview. If Miami took their first loss in conference, and that was to Florida State, a team that SMU and Clemson have already beaten, Clemson and SMU could afford to drop a game and they would still have the tiebreaker over Florida State because of their record against common opponents. Now, I've been breaking down what if all three teams become undefeated. Obviously, that goes into opponent, total opponent records, like the records of everybody you've played against. But if Miami was to lose this one, SMU and Clemson have already beaten Florida State. So they would need SMU and Clemson to drop 2 games, which Clemson could drop a game. They play 3 tougher games to finish this thing up with Virginia Tech, right, Louisville, and Pitt. But I don't really see them dropping 2. And SMU, I don't see dropping 2 down the stretch. They're going to be favored in all of their games, even the one they do play against Pitt. And so Miami would most likely be out of the ACC championship, which then says, okay, you've got an SMU team that might go 11-1 in the SEC or in the ACC championship. And then you've got a Clemson team that might be 11-1 going to the ACC championship too. Why wouldn't we, if we were going to get 2 teams in the ACC, why would we put in the team in South Florida that went 11-1 and didn't make the championship game, lost a head-to-head to both of those teams, lost a common opponent to both of those teams? Like, if anybody was going to go to the ACC, it would obviously be the team that wins it, whether that's Clemson or SMU. And then it would be probably the team that beat the common opponent, and SMU beat them and Miami didn't. So, and I think about that. I think about, well, if Miami doesn't make the ACC championship, who was their quality win against, right? Like, they didn't beat anybody that was ranked. Miami didn't win 1 ranked game this year. If they, even if they go 12-0, right? If they win the ACC title game, they'll have a ranked win for sure. But Miami hasn't had 1 ranked win, and they don't play 1 ranked team the rest of the way. And so they don't have any good wins, in my opinion, and they have a really bad loss as a 3 touchdown favorite at home. So yeah, I don't, a 10-2 Alabama sitting there, or an 11-1 Miami with no good wins. I mean, Georgia, Alabama would have the wins over Georgia, the win against LSU next week, who they play. If Alabama's sitting there at 10-2 and Miami's 11-1, we already saw last year that having more losses doesn't matter, right? And so, yeah, if Miami loses this game, which I'm not predicting to happen, but it I guess gives me a little bit of joy as a Florida State fan to kind of think about what may happen bad to them. This would be a detrimental loss. And I'm not saying they wouldn't be in no matter what, but this would be a pretty bad loss for them because, again, I don't think they go to the ACC, and they get snubbed for Alabama or a 1-loss Notre Dame team or somebody like that.
Florida State at Miami. Why did I say it like that? Miami. It was like something just happened. It's the mimosas, right? It's the mimosas that got me.
6 next time, not 7.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Florida State at Miami, 7:00 ESPN Saturday night. Right now, the Seminoles are a 21-point underdog. TJ, tell us where you can find you.
Yeah, College Football Addiction. I do a lot of national content there, breaking down a lot of the Clemson stuff. Obviously, they're off this week, so I haven't done anything with it, but certainly will for their last 3 ACC games, and then what I expect will be a Clemson ACC championship. Also, weekly breaking down on Sundays kind of where that 3-team race is. Pitt fans are getting mad at me for not including them, but where that SMU, Clemson, Miami race is, and who you need to win, who needs to win this one, that one, whatever. And then if you want FSU specific stuff, if you want to watch me wallow in self pity, you can go to Double Fries No Slaw.
You do that very well. You've acclimated. Yet it's very entertaining. Everybody, I have the links to both of TJ's channels right below this video. Check them out. Let him know that you saw him on this channel. Folks, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you will subscribe. Remember, subscribing is free, the sweetest words in the English language. Y'all take care of yourself, and as always, go Tigers.